Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. Now, you know you're really winning the Cold War when the most dangerous and scandalous and horrifying event of 1989 was the lip-syncing scandal of Milli Vanilli, because I've been reliably told by no one that it was on this day in 1989 that when they were performing on MTV as part of this MTV Club tour, they were doing their hit "Girl, You Know It's True," and the recording glitched, and it kept skipping "Girl, You Know It's Girl, You Know It's" a million times, and they ran off stage not knowing what to do. Now, stranger things have happened, but at the time, it was the beginning point for most people of the scandal, which eventually led to the realization that these two guys, whose torsos, for whatever reason, you see behind me, Rob and Fab, they were not actually singing at all on their records, nor were they singing a note live. They were dancing very well, and they were, probably choosing their own clothes because they both came from a fashion background, but they weren't singing. And this was a huge scandal. And there are several ways to look at it. One, you can look at it as society in the late 80s valued musical authenticity a lot more than it does today. That's not to say that Milli Vanilli's music was profound, nor was it ever supposed to be profound. It was, danceable love songs for young people, and it was all perfectly pleasant. It never went really past PG, or not, if not PG-13. It was, it was that sort of thing, but nevertheless, people really valued musical authenticity, or so one interpretation goes. The other interpretation is that the record label knew that bubblegum music like this tends to be flash in the pan, and that they allowed this scandal to percolate and get out of control, knowing that their band, their fake artists, would get more attention on their way out if they went with a bang than if they went with a whimper and allowed other artists to sort of take their place. And a recent documentary about Milli Vanilli really does show how the record companies all knew. First they hit it, and then they actually did, in fact, help to, intensify the so-called scandal. And they really left these two guys who were very young at the time, they left them in the lurch. And the funny thing is they wanted to sing, but they were basically told, no, 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 don't worry about that. And so they danced, and they danced very well. Now, the real scandal really is, why did people really care all that much? On the one hand, should music not be the whole package? In other words, does it really matter if these two guys aren't singing? The song is a real song. It's not imaginary. It's been recorded by someone. And these two guys were very good at presenting it. It does, however, I think, even though the record label did exaggerate a lot of the scandalous elements, it does show that people don't like being lied to. I think that if they were to present themselves, let's say, the ye old Milli Vanilli review or something like that, and just say from the beginning, look, there's session musicians who did the singing. You could even bring them on tour as sort of fake or real, in this case, backing vocalists. And these two guys are sort of dancing around and entertaining the crowd. I think people might have said, okay, some wouldn't have liked it. They would say, this isn't music. But the "this isn't music" crowd probably didn't like Milli Vanilli in the first place because the style of music was so bubblegum. And so there's that element to it. But look at where we are now. Since the late 90s, early 2000s, we've been living in an age of auto tune and of all sorts of softwares to help quantize and clean up everything. And now it's very common to go to shows where not a single note is sung by the featured artist. And in some shows, barely even a note of music is played. It's all recorded. And even going back before that, there have been artists that relied heavily on session musicians. So they might be on the cover of the album smiling with the guitar, but 95% of the guitar parts on the album would have been played by Glenn Campbell, or later on Steve Lukather, great session musicians who then became stars in their own right. So again, it's not the Milli Vanilli scandal wasn't as new, except traditionally it wasn't the singers who were being helped by session guys and girls in the studio. But now that we're into the age of AI, you don't even need session musicians to fake it. In fact, the whole thing can be completely artificial. And there's this one band, I forget the name, that's been making the rounds on Spotify that's totally fake. The images of the band are hyper realistic AI images. The music is all AI, and people are listening to it, which just goes to show that I would think that when left to their own devices and not informed of a scandal, most people want to be entertained. And unless we're talking about kinds of music that historically attract critical listeners, classical music, jazz, maybe things like progressive rock, things like that. Um, People just want to be entertained. And whether it's Miley Cyrus dancing to a backing track or an AI music on Spotify, Milli Vanilli was actually a bit more authentic than a lot of what's going on today. And yet they paid the price because the industry threw these two young guys who just wanted to be famous and give people a good show. It threw them to the wolves. One of them, Rob, sadly died quite a few years ago. Fab is going he's singing. He taught himself or took singing lessons. He's not bad. So he's performing. He's still in the fashion world. He came out of it much better for it. But sadly, Rob spiraled into a situation that wasn't good. Do I blame the industry? I definitely do. Let me know, though, what you think. And as always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.